You have to watch this video. My friend, who's also a successful entrepreneur, and I discuss 4 mindsets that have shifted since we've turned 30. We're gonna go into detail and talk about exactly how those have positively impacted our lives for the better. Stay tuned, it's juicy and value-packed. Welcome to another video, guys. Today I've got a good friend of mine. His name is Emil. And the reason I wanted to have a chat with him and actually share what we're gonna speak about today is because both of our lives have taken quite a turn in the last 2 years. And we were having a conversation the other day and you were saying, oh, what you're speaking about really resonates with me. And then you shared some of your insights and they really resonated with me as well. And we came to the conclusion that it was because of the fact that we've recently, struck the ripe old age of 30, moving on in life. No gray hairs yet, but we're moving on. And with that change in age came a change in mentality, which I think is going to be very valuable if we share a few things that we realize. I know your life has had a massive change, or you've made a lot of changes in the last year or two, just in terms of growing your business, in terms of personal growth. Yeah, let's get straight into it. What were the main things that came about for you to make these changes? And then we'll just bounce ideas off each other.
As in the reasons?
Yeah, the reasons, and then so what those changes were, and then the reasons behind them.
Okay. So mainly I would say that I've been very nomadic over the last couple of years. So I started being semi-nomadic at the age of 21, and I just recently turned 30. So I was kind of looking for that place to live and that place to settle down. That was the idea. Yeah. So I stayed 6 months here, 6 months there, got a lease here, got a lease there. And always decided that, it wasn't really my place because I didn't like this or that. And at some point when I turned 30, I don't know if it was just turning 30 or if it was the idea of that 3 in the front of the 0 that made me think, I have to stop doing this because every time that I move, I start from 0. And this is really exhausting me. I don't have the same energy anymore that I used to have at 26, 27. Or maybe I still have that energy, but now I understand that energy is better dedicated in other areas of life, like work, for example. So I made the conscious decision. Intuitively, I would still be traveling here and there, but I made the conscious decision of just settling down, like for real.
Okay.
So that was the biggest.
So what have the main changes been since you've settled down? What have you noticed in terms of the difference in the outcomes that you're achieving now?
I noticed now that so much time and energy was actually spent on worrying about where to go next and finding reasons why I didn't want to be in this place. And now that I don't have, you never really understand these things while you're in the situation, and you usually see it afterwards when you reflect back. And I feel that now, looking back at it, I feel that I have so much more energy now that is being used in an efficient way professionally, because now I do long blocks of hours and I'm really dedicated towards one thing, towards my professional development, without wasting energy on these other topics.
For sure. I agree 100%. When you're traveling from place to place, like 50 to 60% of your bandwidth is just focused on finding a cafe or finding an apartment to rent, or even just creating a friendship circle. So,
but that's in the short term. Yes, that's in the short term. I was more speaking about the long term. Like, I'm going to start a new life here and a new life there, and it can take you like months to think of like where you want to go, and and then of course what you said, also the short term. Like if you don't have a proper office space where you go every day, okay, so you're gonna go to actually it's a good metaphor. It's like on a smaller scale, but it's also very true. You don't have an office space to go to, so you're gonna go to this coffee shop, that coffee shop. The Wi-Fi doesn't work. Coffee isn't good, you don't find parking, blah, 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 blah. You waste so much time.
100%. So what have the biggest changes been in terms of results? So obviously, you've only just moved, right? You've been in Spain now for a few months. So you're still realizing those results. But up until this point, what have been the main things that have changed? Because from just us speaking, what you've achieved has been quite incredible.
Oh, thank you. So I would say definitely because of the extra dedication and energy I've been able to, but it's not just that, it's more also the sense of purpose that you mentioned that as well in our call, that you have more of a sense of direction. And I think that combined with more time and energy, that created more results. So was that the question, or was it more like what was I able to achieve that I wasn't able to achieve before?
Yeah. So what were you able to achieve before that you've basically just ramped up just in terms of your productivity and business and things like that?
Oh, I would say that I'm just more on top of things right now, and this gives me more confidence to basically just go one step further in whatever I do.
I think a big thing for me as well, and we were talking about this before the call, was, there's a psychologist, and I can't remember who he was or what the phrase was exactly, but essentially what he said was that the first half of our life, he referred to it as the playing stage of our life, and then the second half of our life is more of the finding meaning. And I think that that's essentially what happens here, which is you realize at the beginning stage of your life where you're just investing so much of your finite resources, your time and your energy into things that don't actually give you a return on your investment. Things like work, long-term romantic relationships, and then also friendships as well, right? You're not really thinking about how this can give you some form of a positive return in the long term. And that's not from the perspective of a manipulating way, like what can I get from this, but just wanting something, right? So if you have lots of short-term flings, you spend loads of time going on dates, spending money, and then you get nothing back, right? Because then you never see the person again. Or friendships, spending time with people that you know are not really going to actually provide any value in the long term, which isn't actually a good way to live, right? And I think that realization for me was massive, because I was walking down the street and I just thought, I've spent so much energy, and time, and I've dedicated it towards things, but what have I got to show for it, right?
Yeah.
And that realization for me was just so frustrating in a sense as well. I was like, fuck, man, I've wasted so much time on this.
Definitely when it comes to like dates, for example, like as you said, you sometimes you go as a guy, you go out with girls that are not really your type or your thing, and it's not going to be long term. Still, you kind of have that urge to go on dates, etc.
100%.
It's a bit of a time of waste, resources and time, also the other person's time. But yeah,
100%. I think that was a big realization for me, which was, if this person doesn't qualify as a long-term prospect, then why am I even wasting my time with them?
Yeah.
I'd rather just, because the thing is, it's not going to lead anywhere, right? It's not going to lead anywhere. It's just going to take up time. So that was a big one. The second one that we were speaking about, and I'd love to hear your ideas on this as well, right? So for me, it was more focused on finding meaning, and it may have been sparked by reading that book, Simon Sinek, Start With Why, where you do a deep dive into what really drives you and stuff like that, and it got the wheels turning. But for me, that was big, right? Because I was just lying in bed at night and I thought, what's the reason for all of this? Why am I doing this? Like, what's the drive? So I mean, I think that's something that is ever changing throughout our life. It always develops, depending on where we're at and what we're doing in life. But I think in the second half of life, when you leave that playing stage of life, you become more focused on, why am I doing this thing? Like, what's the reason for this?
Would you say that 30 is that moment when half of life has been achieved?
You know what? This is an interesting thing, right? So it actually happens for different people at different stages. So it could happen. We have a mutual friend. His name, you've met Ege. I can't remember how old he is. He's mid-20s or early 20s, and he's lived a much more a life with many more experiences than other people his age, right? Because he's traveled the world. He's lived in loads of different countries. He's, obviously had an extensive dating life. I believe that he's going through that stage now. He's much younger. He's younger than both of us. But then you can also get someone who maybe, firstly, for the reason that they don't have as much life experience, and secondly, maybe they just don't have the interest in actually stepping outside of that and having the urge to find out more about what the meaning of life is, or what the meaning of life is for that particular person, right? Because it's different for everyone. So I think for you and I, it happened more so at a similar time, because maybe we had similar experiences just in terms of the amount of time that we'd been traveling, the type of friendship groups that we were in. But I think it can happen later on in life as well. Because I was speaking to a mentor of mine, and he was saying that a lot of his clients have that aha moment at about 50 or 60. And I mean, that's it's not late, but I mean, ideally you'd have it early on so that you can actually make a change, right? When you've still got a few years in the bank and you've still got energy to do so.
And some people maybe never have that moment.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Exactly that. They never have that, because it's just, I think it's a yearning for more, right? It's a yearning for, like, why the fuck am I doing this? Do you know what I mean? Like, why am I doing this work? Why am I getting up early? Because the thing is, I think if we can't connect that sense of meaning to what we're doing, then it's like, why? You know, why? I think that's the big question that we begin to ask ourselves later on, which is just, why am I doing this?
I think a big part of it is also because, like, our society is becoming, like, increasingly individualistic, you know, and it's very hard to have, like, a proper why if at the end of the day it's just yourself that you're taking care of, and it's just yourself, you know, that you need to provide for or look after.
100%.
It's a very small thing, you know, but I got a dog last year, and I have to take care of this dog, and it feels like, you know, if I don't wake up in the morning, you know, this dog is not going to get walked. If I don't bring home the food, this dog is not going to be able to eat, and it gives you a lot of fulfillment at the end of the day, even though it's just a dog. It's a very small responsibility, but still.
Yeah.
That's what I can. Yeah, I didn't have that in my early 20s, for example. You know, it was just about me, and you know.
Yeah, I think it's that running away from responsibility as well in the early 20s, where you want to avoid it. But it's interesting that you say that. And it's not actually a small phenomenon where you feel like you've got more purpose, because I did a study once, and I find this fascinating. I don't know if I've spoken to you about this, but they did a study where they took two sets of people in an old age home, and they gave the one set of people just a plant to look after. And obviously what was required to look after the plant is that they have to wake up in the morning and have to water it, right? That they have something greater than themselves to take care of. And the people who had the plant to look after, they needed to look after the plant, they lived significantly longer than the people who didn't.
Really?
Yeah. Just because they had that thing to get up to in the morning, right? And it also refers back to the map of meaning, and one of the 4 quadrants is, you know, being involved in something that is greater than yourself, serving other people, you know. And if you don't have that, then, you know, you'll actually feel lost in life. So it's interesting that you say that.
It makes sense, actually, but I didn't think it was going to be so significant for just a plant.
Just a plant, yeah. And you've got a living animal, right? So that's like to me, that's like having a little kid that one needs to look after. The next thing, man, that I want to speak about, and I'm curious to hear what your experience with this is, and I'll preface this with a story. I was in the mountains of Brazil last year. I went to a retreat for what reason, I don't know. These things just happen occasionally. But the point of the retreat was that you sit in the mountains for 3 or 4 days with no electronics, nothing. You just eat and meditate for 3 or 4 days, which is very painful, actually, because we realize how reliant we are on distraction from moment to moment. A lot of people, what ends up happening is they just leave because they can't take it. It's like torture. It's like prison. So obviously, after having a lot of time to reflect, I had this realization where I thought to myself, how far would I have been if I just stuck to one thing for years and just did a little bit every day or a little bit every week and just not changed, not fallen prey to the shiny object syndrome, which is you start one thing and then, you know, you see something else, it looks more shiny, it looks amazing, and then you jump to that thing. And then during that, I think with everything, mate, but primarily professionally, yeah. And not overcoming, you know, the hardship or boredom, because I think those are the two things that stop us when we are on that path. And to me, I liken it to climbing a mountain, right? So like there are loads of routes to the top of the mountain, and all of the routes will get you there, right? But you just need to stick to one of them until you get to the top. But what the shiny object syndrome is you'll be halfway up the mountain, you'll see another route and you'll think that one will get me there faster, right? So you have to go cross country to get to that route, and then you don't know that route either, right? So you spend a whole lot of time getting there, and you also don't know that route, so you actually have to start from further back, and you don't even end up plateauing, you almost end up just going backwards. You know, so definitely. For me that was massive. It's like the scene from The Matrix, the girl in the red dress. Alex Hormozy had this he used this example, right, where you're walking down the street, you see this very attractive girl in the red dress, and you stop and you turn and you look at her, and you turn away and you look again, and they've got a gun pointing at your head. And I feel like a lot of opportunities in life are like that, right? They look really good in the moment, but when you look again, you know, you've done yourself, because you know. So
it's similar to the story that I told you about being not being able to stay in one place and always looking for a new place. It's exactly the same thing. But definitely professionally, you know, you saw this with Bitcoin and crypto, for example. People had a skill, they were learning a skill, and this Bitcoin wave came. Everybody started being a Bitcoin investor. You see it happening whenever there's a new like gem. Now the same with artificial intelligence. But I remember reading the 48 Laws of Power, and I don't know if have you read that book?
No, I have not read that book.
Yeah, there's one law. It's very simple. Basically, it says the well, something like the well where you've already been digging always gives exponential returns, or returns exponentially higher than the new well. And they do some examples, so I found that interesting. And whenever I have this shiny object syndrome, I think back of that chapter. And also, you know, as in your 20s, this is the typical mistake you make. You keep jumping from one thing to the next. That's what I always did as well. But there is no thing that is infinitely more profitable than another thing. The most profitable thing is just the thing where you actually push through the barrier of difficulty, where you have a discipline to pull through and actually gain skills and pass that barrier that other people aren't able to pass, because they haven't spent enough time, or because they just don't have the mental fortitude to do so. So doesn't matter if it's baking bread or crypto or whatever.
100%. What were some examples of that for you?
Like things that I tried?
Yeah, things that you tried and you know that if you carried on doing them, you would have actually succeeded. And now looking back, you think, why didn't I just carry on, man?
Oh yeah, I don't really have that, because I'm happy that I actually changed and did the thing that I eventually did, just because I like it now and I'm good at it. But there's many things that I tried, the typical things, you know. I always say people that do e-commerce will understand this, but drop shipping is like the gateway drug into e-commerce. Like marijuana is into drugs. So of course I started there, gave up there, you know, did a bit of crypto investing and arbitrage gambling.
I
don't know if you know that. Basically every get rich quick scheme on the internet I've tried.
What's funny is that all of them actually work.
Sorry?
What's funny is that most of them do actually work. It's just sticking to one of them for long enough, which most people don't do. So
it's not actually get rich quick, right? But
no, it's never get rich. Agreed 100%, mate. I had a client 1 or 2 years ago, and he'd made a lot of money on crypto. He'd made millions and millions on crypto. And he said to us, guys, you know, you've got to invest in this crypto. You've got to invest in this crypto. It's going up. It's doing really well. So we thought, dollar bills, you know, we'll invest our savings into this crypto, and you know, in 2 or 3 years when it goes through the roof, you know, we'll buy a small island in the Bahamas, have our nice little car, live happily ever after, right? So we put all of our money into the crypto, and as luck would have it, you know, 2 or 3 weeks the crypto starts going up, and we're sitting there thinking like dollar bills, and then all of a sudden it just went down and down and down and down, and it hasn't gone up since, right? And I was like, I can't remember, 2 years ago, I think.
You still have it?
I still have it, yeah. So I haven't crystallized it, but I mean, I don't think it's looking very positive, if I'm being honest with you. But I mean, it went down like 80 to 90%, right? So I had this realization as well, right? I was like, if I just spent that money on something that I knew was going to give me a better return, like learning a skill or investing in a course that I actually stuck to, how far I would be ahead. But the price of our mistakes is the cost we pay to learn. So
exactly, like how I see it, like in 5 or 10 years, there will be a similar wave with something else, and then you'll probably be a lot wealthier than you were at that point, and then the actual stake is going to be way higher, and because you actually paid that relatively small price to learn that lesson, you're not doing it anymore. So
exactly,
it all makes sense. It's we all think like, oh my god, why is it like this? But it all makes sense. There's I wouldn't say that there's a divinity. I don't know, but there's definitely there's a logic in everything.
100%, 100%. I think things have I really, as wishy-washy as it sounds, like spiritual and as hippie as it sounds, I do think there's a higher intelligence, right? Because so often
GPT.
Sorry?
So Chat GPT.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. But I think, these negative things happen, and then we think in the moment like, oh, why did this happen? And then what we realize is that nearly always something 10 times greater happens. Like that thing had to die for a new opportunity to be birthed, right?
Yeah.
It's like I actually just recently made a video about this. There's a cascade of things that happen just for me being in the US with my girlfriend now. One of the occasions she calls me and she's crying. She's in hysterics. She's like, we can't stay in the apartment anymore. And at the time, it was quite hard to find apartments where we were. So it was just a nightmare. So that was obviously a frustrating thing. But what that led to was finding a really new, nice apartment, much better living situation, gym, swimming pool, just all around much better.
Nice.
That wouldn't have happened without that. Other situation, she calls me in tears again. She's like, oh, this is a completely different time, right? She calls me in tears. She's like, I can't work with this in this place anymore. She had an issue with the boss. So she had to leave. Now, at the time, that was obviously frustrating, but that led to obviously finding different work, finding better work that was much better paying, etc., better situation. Again, that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for that shit situation to take place in the moment. So I think there's always a silver lining, even though it may seem truly bleak in the moment.
Yeah. It helps you to think like that. Because often now when shit happens, I rarely get very frustrated. Even though when something very bad happens to me, I mean, something very bad, I would say relatively bad, or just something frustrating, I don't get so upset anymore, because I'm always thinking, I'm going to see down the road that this was actually beneficial for this or for that.
For sure. I only believe that comes with experience, though. And you have to, it's like, you can't believe that until you've experienced it, right? Because I think some situations do feel truly.
I also feel when you get burned, when you do something wrong, you make a mistake, like you trust the wrong kind of person, the wrong kind of situation, you're gonna pay the price. And then when you make that mistake and you fail to learn from it, the universe, this is how I see it, the universe is going to put you in the exact same position again a few months or a few years later, but the stakes are going to be higher. So whenever you don't learn, it reoccurs with higher stakes. And there's been so many times. I think you have smart people in the world that can learn from one time they make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. So usually it's 2 or 3 times. And I see this always get higher. And I'm always like, now I know, now I learn. And eventually I learn.
100%. Alex Hormozi he defines learning as being same stimulus, different action. So it's like, if I hold up a red card and then I slap you in the face, like the next time I hold up a red card, you're going to duck, right? So if I hold up the red card and you don't duck, it means you haven't learned, right? So it's the same thing what you're referring to now. It's just learning on a macro level, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know. This is the thing, right? I think we're so arrogant at times as well, because at whatever stage we're at in life, we always think that we know. And then we have that shit situation happen, and it just exposes us to what we didn't know in that situation. And we realized how fucking ignorant we were during that situation to think of that. I'm sure you had that experience as well, right? Where you think of a decision you made, a month ago, a year ago, whatever, and you just think, what was I thinking? Like, what was going through my head? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And often you have this idea that you actually knew back in the day, like whenever you made that decision, you kind of knew that it was the wrong decision. Like you had that gut feeling, it's always there, and now it just became like magnified. That's how I feel.
100%. Again, on the topic of being a bit wishy-washy, I believe we have a high intelligence inside. We just need to give ourselves the quietude to actually listen to that. And a lot of the time we don't, right? Because we're too busy being distracted by whatever, phones, events in life, or whatever that may be. But I think that when we listen to our gut, exactly like you say, you know, we often have the answer, we just don't like what it is, so therefore we don't listen to it, or we're too scared to actually make the jump. All right, the last one, point number 4, unless you've got more after this, but for me this was a real sense of urgency, like a genuine sense of urgency, because I feel like up until you're 30 you feel like you're going to live forever. So you think, you know, we always, whether we're conscious of it or not, we always put it on the back burner. You know, I'm going to start that business. But I'm just going to do this trip to Thailand, or I'm just going to do this trip around Europe for a few months. I'll push it off. And then you turn 30 and you realize, fuck, I'm actually not going to live forever. Like this, I've lived, I've pissed away 10 decades, not really getting anywhere, having loads of cool experiences, but not necessarily investing in things that are actually going to give me a return. And then you get to 30 and you think, well, you know, if I don't start now, like I don't really have when else am I going to start? You know, I can start when I'm 40, but you know, that's going to be 10 years of the most, you know, essentially energetic life that I have, and I'm not going to be able to capitalize on that. So for me, that was massive. You know, I'm doing an experiment with my girlfriend now. This morning routine, this Huberman morning routine. For the first week, I didn't wake up at the time because I was tired, just making excuses. I made a deal with her, and I said, "Look, I'm going to give you $300 if I don't wake up and I don't do this routine perfectly for the next week." And I've done every single thing on the list perfectly for the last 4 days of the 7 days, and I feel like life, you know, in terms of a macro, from a macro level, has done that to a certain degree for me when I turned 30, which was, if you don't start now, you're fucked, right? You're going to lose out on something.
I absolutely agree. And it's funny again that we have the same kind of feeling at the same kind of age, which makes me think that it's you know, a universal thing almost, or definitely like within our culture. I do feel that some cultures, I can't speak for other cultures, but I think that some cultures, men have it at a younger age. I think we're a little bit like privileged in that sense. We don't really have to get our shit together so early as some other people do. Especially we don't have to get it together as early as a lot of women have to, you know, for like biological reasons.
For sure.
So in a way, I would have wished that the urgency came a little bit earlier. But it is how it is. I'm happy that it's here now, and I feel like a very big difference within my mind now compared to like a few years ago. Absolutely different.
For sure.
Experience.
It's almost like a different human, right? Like a different person inside, which is driving you.
You know what it is? Like let's say you're working on something. Like I've been doing the same kind of work for people that are watching. I'm into everything Amazon related. I have an Amazon agency. Various clients, and before I would do this work, and when things got hard, you know, I was working 3-4 hours, and there's a lot of like troubleshooting for clients, and you know, products that are deactivated and this and that, and these things sometimes are very hard, and you cannot always activate these products, for example, or achieve this level of sales. And I would dedicate a certain amount of hours, and then I would be like, you know what, I'm tired. This is all I can. That's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
Now I have this feeling I cannot afford to do this anymore. You know, I have you know 10 hours to work in a day. I got to at least like do something productive for all these 10 hours. I have to actually fix this thing, whatever it is. I have to find a solution, and I actually find a solution because my mentality is completely different. Also, like it's very hard for me now to waste my time watching Netflix, watching movies. I almost. And I actually tried. I try to literally distract my mind because I'm so into work. I'm trying to watch a movie, and I'm 10 minutes in, and I just can't. I'm shutting it off. I'm like, you know, I can do something productive, you know, that will actually just like you said, like you invest something and you get a return down the line. I feel like all the time, it's like with money on the bank. I don't put any money in the bank because I know, inflation is gonna eat it and I'm not gonna get any return on it. So I like to put it on the stock market. It's the same with my time. If I watch a movie, it's gone forever. If I invest it in my skill set or my business, I can actually, generate returns.
It's like would you rather eat one donut now or wait and then get 2 donuts later down the line?
Or then wait again and get 3 donuts, And
exactly. You're like, how long can you wait?
Chasing the carrot, right? So this is the other extent of it. You know what I mean? Like those people this is then the other side of the spectrum. You see this in movies and people like that, probably like these wealthy 60-year-old people that have a family and they're always chasing the next dollar and the next car, the next house, and they don't spend any time with their family. So this is the other side of the extreme, I suppose.
For sure. I guess it's just reaching a fine balance,
We can have a video on that in 20 years.
Exactly. Years. Yeah, we're gonna be like, what were we doing chasing that?
Yeah,
chasing those goals. We should have just we should have just gone back to Playa del Carmen, bought a little apartment and just lived happily ever after. Drinking mimosas on the beach. It's interesting that you say that. They did the study. I don't know if you've heard of it. They tried to find, what the characteristics were in very successful people, and they found that there were 3 universal characteristics. And the one was they had this extreme capability to just stick to one thing and not shift from it. They would just choose one thing and they wouldn't shift from it. Apart from that, they had this massive fear or this massive sense of insecurity that they were running away from. That was the second thing. And the third thing was that they had this ego complex in that they believed that they were meant for more. So it creates a very interesting scenario where you've got... Sorry?
Isn't that the same like the second point, because it both stems from like a point of insecurity, point 2 and point 3?
But one is pulling and one is pushing. So you've got this thing where they're running towards what they believe they can achieve. They believe that they are made for more. You've got this fear that they're running away from because they're scared of not achieving that, or they're scared of not living up to their worth. And then you've got this thing where they're not going to shift from that. They just have this impulse control. So it's rather than waiting for 2 donuts, they'll wait for 100, no matter how long it takes. They don't care. They'll just put themselves through pain to get there, which is very interesting, I find, which is very interesting. And it's exactly what you're saying now. A lot of the people that do reach that extreme success, because they've got those characteristics so ingrained into who they are, it's very hard to shift out of that. Even when very important matters come up, things like family, they're just like, no, I'm just like, this is the way I am. So they just keep on grinding, keep on hustling until they get to wherever they get to, right? Which can come with a host of problems if we're looking at it from a perspective of trying to live a fulfilled, happy life with meaning. But fuck that. We're 30 and we want to get to where we want to get to. Exactly. So I think the one thing that I wanted to end off with, unless you've got anything else that you wanted to share, the one thing that I wanted to just share was, I think, and you alluded to this already when we were talking, which was, it's easy to look back on a certain point in our lives or a certain period in our lives and think, I should have done it this way, I should have done it that way. If I'd done it that way, I would be here instead of here. But we're essentially wishing away, what has created us. We're wishing away what's made us and what's turned us into who we are as people, which is obviously never a good thing, right? Because if we didn't have those experiences, then we wouldn't have learned and we wouldn't be in the situation. So I think one of the things that I try to do on a daily basis is accept that and almost be happy for it, even though if I could have chosen, it's a weird dichotomy. It's like if I could have, I would have, but at the same time, I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So it's just accepting that past and just realizing that without it, we wouldn't actually be where we are.
There's nothing else we can do than accept the past, right? So
exactly.
There's not even a choice. So even just wasting energy on the idea of changing the past is a waste.
100%. Well, man, thank you very much for coming on today.